What is going on, guys? It's Nick from Surfcast in the Island, back at you with another video. Today's topic of discussion is going to be rod action and determining rod selection. So you're going to see I have 3 rods to my left, and they're all virtually 9-footers, with the exception of one which is a 9.2, but you guys get the gist. It's within that 9-foot range. And many people, or I shouldn't say many people, but people out there would assume that all of these 3 rods would do the same thing and perform under similar applications. And in some cases, that couldn't be further from the truth. The reason being is that rod action is a very, very fundamental concept to grasp, because it affects what types of baits you're going to throw, how heavy the baits you're going to throw, and how much power and backbone that rod has. Okay. This video is also going to be intended to inform you guys on what type of rod action and power would best fit your needs. And that's pretty much it. Let's get into it shortly. Alright, so the first rod I'm going to show you guys to my left is a Lamiglas GSB 1081L blank. Personally, I just got this rod just short of 2 to 3 months ago. I haven't had the opportunity to cast it myself, but I have used the 1081L in terms of borrowing one of my friends, field testing it myself. And I love the rod for back bay applications, light surf applications. Not something I would throw on the jetty because it doesn't have nearly as much backbone as some of the next rods I'm about to show you guys. Courtesy to Saltwater Bait and Tackle out in Islip, I bought the rod there. Great customer service, great servicing Van Stall reels. They're one of the few that I know of that are certified Van Stall technicians on the island, with the exception of Whitewaters. But yeah, that pretty much takes care of that. Cool thing about the 3 rods I'm going to show you, they all come with a dual locking reel seat. That means they have 2 screw locks on them. As you guys can see, hold on, let me just move this out of the way. There's the dual locking reel seat on the bottom. Fuji reel seat, all high quality materials here. You have high quality plastic framing. You have the X-Flock grips that come on all the GSB blanks that are bought in the stores. I know some guys that customize these rods. They'll Paco grip them, they'll cork tape them. But the standard one, like I said, comes with the X-Flock. I've had no problems with it. It's great. It's pretty much the golden standard, if you will. And yeah, like any other Lamiglas, it shows you the specs on the rod here. I believe this rod is rated 1/2 to 2 ounces, making this rod in particular ideal for light bucktails, small plastic swimmers, swim baits, little poppers. Nothing too heavy. This is not the type of rod you're gonna throw big daughters and big pencil poppers, bottle plugs on. You guys get the idea. It's got a pretty whippy tip to it. As you guys can see, it's got a lot of give. But again, since it's a moderate fast, it tends to, as a general rule of thumb, moderate fast rods bend in the top third. Anything that's considered a fast action rod bends in the upper half of the rod. The top third pretty much is where you can see most of the bend as it comes to a backbone around, I'd say, the 4th guide in, 4th, 5th guide in, maybe a little higher, maybe 3rd, 4th guide. You start to get the backbone. Also, another notable feature on Lamiglas GSB rods, they all come with the Fuji K-frame guides, which are tangle free. That's pretty much a golden standard nowadays, I know. Back then they used to use big 40 guides and alkanites, but these are 30 strippers to my understanding. But just great construction. I mean, this is the closest you're gonna get, all these three rods, to a custom rod. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I would throw, like I said, throw this particular rod on, you know, the open beach and back bay applications. I know this could be a big springtime rod for me. In terms of the reel I would pair with this rod in particular, I would go anywhere from a VR50, a 75, a VS100, a VS150. Those are pretty much the reels I pair with this. VR50 being on the smaller side, but you can get away with it. I've maxed out VR50s on 9-foot rods, and they work just fine. Haven't really had any problems with them. Like I said, in terms of VR50, anywhere from a 7 to a 9-foot is ideal in that regard. Everything else would be totally fine on this rod, as well as I mentioned previously. But yeah, I'll get into the next rod I'm gonna get into. Okay, so the next rod I'm going to show you to my left is also, like I said, a 9-footer. This is a GSB 1081M as opposed to the 1081L. This, I've had the opportunity to throw this rod pretty much the past season and a half, 2 seasons. I absolutely love it. It is a phenomenal setup. I intend to use it a lot in the spring, especially on the rocks and the jetties, as I'll get into, because this rod has a lot more backbone than the L. In terms of the rating on this rod, I don't know if I did mention it or not, but it's rated 3/4 to 3 as opposed to 1/2 to 2. So that in itself tells you that it is a more powerful rod, have you will. Another way you could tell just by holding this rod, I'm not going to do it side by side, but the diameter of this blank is thicker than that of the L. So what would I throw on this rod? I've thrown anywhere from pencil poppers, cotton cordels. Those are a little on the lighter side, but I've thrown the Super Strike little necks are great. Up to 827 diamond jigs throws this great. Bucktails, same thing, swim baits, mag daughters. You could also get away with mag daughters on the L. It's going to load it up a little more, but it'll cast just fine. Same features. It has the K-frame tangle-free guide system. Same amount of guides. It's the same amount of same amount of guides, because it's built on a similar blank, not the exact same, but it's similar. But yeah, this rod is great on the jetty. I've used it. Jones, Rockaway, handled big bluefish, some nice sized bass to 34, 35 inches. In terms of the reel that I would throw on this, I have it paired with the VS150, and I feel like that reel is pretty much built for this rod. It matches beautifully up with it. No complaints whatsoever. Caught a lot of fish the past 2 seasons, and that pretty much takes care of that. Again, it's a moderate fast, and you'll see this one has a little bit less give in the tip. If you wiggle it, you see it's got a much more much quicker recovery or response time, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it. So it's still a fast action rod like the last one. You see it's got a lot more backbone and a lot more power. So if you want a more versatile rod, I would lean more towards this as opposed to the L. The L is a little more limited to what you can throw on it in terms of size. You have a wider array and a wider array of options, I should say, with this rod because of its versatility. Funny story, the last time I threw a heavier diamond jig on a rod that was rated 1/2 to 2 ounce, if I remember correctly, I ended up snapping it because, you know, Rod rating is very important. If you don't listen to what a rod's rated for, sometimes it could, land you in a place you don't want to be, like breaking a rod. So I kind of learned my lesson in that regard. Yes, you can intermingle. Push you could push those ranges a tiny bit, but you don't want to bend those rules too much in terms of the rod rating, because you'll end up snapping a rod because of trying to cast a plug you should have been casting in the first place. But neither here nor there. Like I said, this rod's great all around. Open beach, jetty, inlet. I've field tested it everywhere, and I haven't had it fail anywhere so far. But yeah, that pretty much covers this rod. What other reels that would go great on here? A VR 125 would be great. A VR 150. I wouldn't really go with a VR 50 on this rod because it's a little bit heavier of a rod rating. That's why I recommended I would put the 50 on the L as opposed to the M. But now I'm going to get into the final rod, which varies drastically in terms of the action and power. So stay tuned. Okay, so the final rod to my left I will be talking in depth about is the 9'2" Lamiglas Skinner rod. And right off the bat, you're going to see probably the most notable difference are the regular guides as opposed to the K-frame tangle-free guides. This blank is the GSB 1101 ML blank. So a little bit of history behind this rod. I believe I talked about it in previous lectures briefly. This original blank is a 10-footer, or was a 10-footer, and what John wanted was something that was very, very versatile, similar to that of the 1081M, but something that had a moderate action. So what he did was he took the original blank, like I told you, the 1101, and he cut a foot off the back to make the rod a little more moderate, and he came up with the Skinner rod, which is rather difficult to find. I know he uses it a lot in his videos, and this is pretty much his go-to rod. It's a staple. I know him personally. He talked about throwing a VS200 on it. That's a little bit big for me, but everyone has different preferences. Not saying it wouldn't work or not, because I've seen many people throw a 200 on it, and I believe, to my understanding from what they've said, it works totally just fine. The rating on this rod is 1 to 3 ounces, but it's a moderate. And what you're going to see is this rod has a lot more give than the 2 previous rods I showed you. It's kind of a tough concept to grasp, that, how can a moderate rod that's a little more whippy handle a bigger plug and has a stronger rating than that of the 2 previous rods. And it's still a concept, I'm not going to lie, that I'm trying to grasp as well. But just from throwing this rod alone, you can see it's got backbone. It's a very, very powerful rod, but you can see that it bends pretty much halfway down the rod. Anything that's a moderate bends, the bend pretty much ends closer to the reel itself, or that 30 stripper guide or the 40 guide, whatever you want to call it. So what have I thrown on this rod? Just similar to that of the 1081M, I've gotten away with big tins. I've seen guys throw Super Strike Daughters. Personally, I haven't done that with this rod. I have my 11 for that. Not going to get into that rod. I want to make this video short because I could go all night talking about rods and all the different rods I used. But neither here nor there. Yeah, like I said, Daughters, tins, bucktails, heavier bucktails, up to 3 ounces. I know John himself, he's thrown rigged and live eels, which I believe are a tad heavier than the 3 ounce end of the spectrum for this rod that could handle it. But Yeah, I field tested this rod personally with bigger bucktails, fishing the rips of Democrat Point, 2.5 ounce bucktails, and it moves very big fish just fine. I've caught teen size, mid to high teen size bluefish on it. In terms of the reel I have it paired with, I feel like the VR 150 pairs perfectly with it. Like I said, another recommendation that people use is a VS 200 on it. But pretty much stick between those two reels, maybe bump down to a VR 125, the smallest with this setup. But overall, it's great. Those bigger mag daughters from Yozuri, I call them the Mega Mags. Those would work just fine on this rod as well. But again, this is another very versatile rod. You throw. I've seen guys throw on the open beach. I've primarily fished this on the jetty. But even the back bays, it'll get it done because this moderate rod, it has enough backbone to stop a big fish, because I have stopped a big fish. But at the same time, if you really want to mess around with a bunch of schoolies in hopes of catching a bigger fish, that rod can perform and be just as enjoyable as any other rod that's a lighter action. So I feel like out of the 3 rods that I've talked about, this one probably covers everything in terms of big and small fish and what types of plugs you can throw with it, as opposed to the ones you can't really or aren't as comfortable fishing with. But yeah, I would recommend this rod to someone that, only wants 1 or 2 rods that they're going to use, and they're not going to have a whole arsenal, because this one is probably the most versatile out of the 3 I've discussed. If this video gets a lot of positive feedback, though, I'll get into other rods, smaller and larger than these 3 9s that I have, and why do I use them, how do I use them, how do I work them, what lures I throw with them, so on and so forth. But last but not least, I'd like to end on the note of I'm not affiliated with Lamiglas rods. I don't have a sponsorship or an endorsement with them. So there's no conflict of interest. Everything I've been telling you guys throughout this entire video is only for your benefit and benefit only, through my personal logbook and experiences of using these rods. So if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you guys liked, comment, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow me on social media at surfcasting_the_island. Thank you, and tune in next time.